I see the stream started.
Okay, you should be. That's weird. There we go. You're
Oh,
all set.
thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Permanent Municipal Building Commission Ordinance Review Subcommittee to order. If you could rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Here we go.
I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance to
To
the
the
flag
flag
the United States
of
of
the
America,
United States, America,
for
and to
which
the
the
republic
one
for
nation,
which it
under God,
stands,
indivisible,
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
for all.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay, great. Lauren, if you could take the roll.
Counselor Ploy.
Here.
Oh no, you guys just froze. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's weird. I'm in my office. I shouldn't be doing that.
That's all right. We can see you, but we can hear you.
Counselor Ploy,
Here.
Counselor Nagel,
Here.
and Counselor Rada.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Lauren. So we'll just jump right into it. I hope folks got the chance to look at the most recent draft, which is, of course, our draft having now been sent to legal review, and with some comments from the town staff and with their suggestions. Lauren, I don't know if you want to kind of tee up some of this and then we can go from there. That would be great.
I will, but if you don't mind, can we just do the couple of housekeeping things that were on the agenda super quick?
Oh, sure.
I just want to point out that there are no members of the public, so that we have no public comment right now. And then we did have minutes to approve for December 19th. And I'm not sure what happened, but we did have a member of the public bring to our attention that there was a typo in the minutes that got posted. It's really weird because the Word document has the whole sentence and the PDF that was printed from the Word document cuts off. So there is an item 4 on the minutes that says the commission agreed to send the current draft language to, and it just, the line cuts off. It should say to the town attorney for review.
Got it. I saw that.
So if I can get a motion in a second with the amendment.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And thank you, Lauren. That was my mistake. My agenda wasn't loading here. It's been a couple weeks since we met, so I'm a little rusty, but
No, totally fine.
and I apologize to Ms. Lyons in advance. And we will move forward with the rest. So,
Perfect.
Lauren, again, if you want to tee up and we'll go from there, that would be terrific.
Okay, hopefully you can see this draft.
Yes, we can see that.
Yeah.
Great.
Kind of.
So, kind of, you want me to make it bigger?
Yeah, a little bigger would be better for me.
That better?
Better, yeah.
Okay. So, there have been, so many iterations of this that have gone back and forth, and then I had sent over a copy with some comments from departments. And what I'm showing you here is just kind of the most clean version of this that we can get on the screen with the changes that you all have made. So we'll start at the beginning as we have been doing and just kind of clarify some of the questions that have come up and some changes that have been made to the draft document.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. In the powers and duties, we did have a couple of questions as to just clarifying this section. The first one was what if we didn't send a project to this commission consistent with the current ordinance? For instance, if there was an emergency situation and this process couldn't be handled. So we went to the town attorney, and you'll see here highlighted in yellow at the end, this is the language that the town attorney and I have finessed to kind of give voice to that really unexpected project that would require us to be able to repair or renovate and restore a building due to an emergency situation. So
Hey, I have
I'll
a
read the
question.
sentence. Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
What could, I'm just wondering, what could possibly be an emergency situation that we couldn't bring together the Permanent Municipal Building Commission within 24 hours? I don't understand why what this could possibly entail.
Sure. So I'm going to use an example of something that happened here. We had a vehicle crash into the building before I started here. And that was something that impacted the safety and also just, what came along with the damage that was caused was repairs that had to be made in a very quick turnaround. I can imagine that if that were to happen again, we wouldn't necessarily have time to pull together the commission to make a determination on emergency repairs. So for instance, when that happened, they evacuated the department that was involved and they immediately got a contractor out to start assessing damage and start putting in repairs within hours. So again, I don't foresee this being something that would be used a significant at all. I mean, like knock on wood, something like that never happens again. But there just is a caveat because we have had this happen before where we've had to make that decision within an hour, not 24, because there has been damage to the building that's while it's occupied.
Okay, that makes sense, and I think I remember that.
Yeah.
And it says upon approval of the town manager, do we want this to also require acknowledgement and approval of the town council?
So this is something that the town attorney and I did kind of go back and forth on because in one instance, there's two items that are like this in this current draft, and we'll get to the other one. And in one instance, we used manager, and in one instance, we had used the council. And he and I went back and forth, and he had reviewed the charter, and we felt it was appropriate that in both instances, the authority could actually go to the manager. And in this instance, I would say because we may not be able to convene an emergency meeting of the council either within enough time to address what's going on.
So I'll just jump in here if I can, Lauren, on
Yep.
this, on Councilor Rada's points. I think, of course, we don't want to think of a situation where this would need to be used, but I think a lot of the work that we've done over the course of the past months in revising this ordinance has been to build in accountability measures to prevent kind of unilateral or unclear decision-making processes from moving forward. And this, and I sympathize with Councilor Rada's points. I think this opens up a door for a kind of unilateral decision-making that could be dangerous and could affect the strength of this ordinance that we've obviously spent many months working on. So I guess notwithstanding the very important points you make about some emergency circumstances where that might be important, could we maybe look at, and maybe you already have this, I haven't seen this draft, but defining in the definition section a little bit more what that emergency situation looks like. I know we do talk about emergency circumstances in definitions, but how those emergency circumstances could trigger something like this. And then I'd also add to Councilor Rada's point, and yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about why you and the attorney came to the view that it would require only the approval of the manager and not of council. there's a lot of, obviously we're counselors, so there's a lot of discomfort in that. And so if you could just talk a little bit more about in this instance and in the other one that you mentioned in the ordinance, why that view was taken.
Yeah, and then
Sure.
there's the question
Yeah.
of what is an emergency, just to tag that on.
Which I think
And
that goes.
one of the concerns I have, and it wasn't related to a building emergency, but there were situations that a previous town manager took upon himself to deal with without even notifying the town council until much farther along in a given process. And number one, that puts the council in an awkward position of things happening and us not being aware, and possibly inappropriate or questionable decisions by a town manager that may or may not have received approval if it had been discussed with the town council. So I'm coming at this somewhat gun shy and having had to deal with those situations. But that's not to say that we don't trust and don't want to trust the town manager, but somehow I want to see some accountability and some acknowledgement on the
I
part
hear
of the
what you're
town council
saying.
as well.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about the importance of checks and balances, and I am someone that really firmly believes in that importance as well. So I get it. So I want to address everything, and I hope I'm addressing all of the concerns that were just brought up. Let me just start by saying that the charter gives the town manager the more day-to-day oversight of the town, and that's part of where we were coming from and going with the town manager. The other thing is that in the local emergency operation plan, and if we were to enact the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, in both of those instances, the state says that the CEO, which is the town manager, is the person who opens the EOC and is the person who is in charge of it, as well as in the local emergency operation plan. So we kind of piggybacked on the charter duties of the day-to-day operations. This felt more of like a day-to-day, something that would have to be handled immediately. The potential inability to get a quorum of the council was also a factor, but also just going to emergencies in general, that the state gives those powers of oversight to the town manager. So we kind of, to keep consistency there, but I do hear what everyone is saying about checks and balances. I would 100% agree with you. I think we could definitely add in language that would say, we could add in, so I've got two different ideas kind of floating through my head, and one is coming from the former town that I worked in. When we did their last charter revision, we created emergency powers, and one of the items that we had, this was a town meeting form of government, was that if a quorum of the full board of selectmen could not be convened within 2 hours, then the first selectman had the authority to XYZ. The other thing that we did in other instances in that charter is we said that, the first selectman had the responsibility and authority to address certain things and had to report that whatever they did to address the item within 24 hours to the full board of selectmen. So I think we could potentially put something like that into this section as well.
Yeah, so I know Councilor Rada, you have a point. I'll just respond very briefly. I think that's great, Lauren. I think if we can review that a bit more, that would be ideal. I understand the concerns around obtaining a quorum of council, but if there's an emergency circumstance, I would imagine that would not be all that difficult. And I know I may be surprised of some instances where it could be, but I'm kind of doubtful of that. And the other part though is yes, the town manager obviously is responsible for those day-to-day operations, but a long-term capital project and whether or not to put that capital project, subject that capital project to this process is, I think, a bit far beyond the bounds of just day to day. And so I understand the points that you make, but I think that the discomfort you're sensing here, as Councilor Rada said, it is based in, some experiences that perhaps some councilors have had, certainly not with our great town manager currently, but those are maybe some responses to that, and we just want to be mindful of that so as to not create any kind of unnecessary or potentially adverse loophole or something like that.
To add to
Yes.
that, it's that we have had experience, some of us have had experiences where the public knows before we do in a vast variety of areas, and including this. And I have assumed that this ordinance is for major things that have happened and not for minor things. And well, I don't know at the moment. I think there's a threshold in terms of when this would kick in and when it wouldn't kick in. If you don't need a building committee to have something done, whatever it was, then the town manager could go forth and do it. But I realize our problem right here, or question right here, is the council not being informed about, in this particular kind of case, major things being done, and the public telling us or questioning us about things, and we, or at least those not in the know on the council, have no idea what's going on.
And we do specify it later on in the ordinance, as we all know, and as was referenced, to add to your points, Councilor Nagel, about emergency modification of a project and the responsibility of the town manager to submit, I think it says prompt written notification of that to the council. And I think, that's language we're all very comfortable with because it retains the authority in the council to respond to an emergency circumstance. And empowers them to do that. This seems to undercut that in some way.
I agree.
A suggestion in terms of language might be for that last sentence highlighted in yellow. We delete upon approval of the town manager and start with something like this ordinance shall not apply to emergency circumstances when immediate repair or renovation are critical and necessary, something like that.
And I think, again, adding on to Councilor Rada's points, I think that's a good revision, but I think we also need to specify, who determines that emergency circumstance. And maybe that can go in the definition section, or maybe it can go elsewhere. But I think we need to specify that as well. And obviously, it seems we all agree that that authority should lie with the council primarily.
So we did, what was originally floated to the town attorney was this sentence, basically without the authority, just that the ordinance would not apply to emergency repairs and restoration of buildings. And the town attorney very much felt that there should be some clarification as to who gets to determine that is the case. I want to just really quickly speak to, Matt, your other comment about the prompt written notice, and just say that the current language, and just let me go back down to it and see. So this is current language. Emergencies are situations in which the project would be, and these are specific to the project versus an emergency situation in general, right? But we do give that authority to the manager.
I see that, but we also require that notification to council. And
correct. And I'm saying we can we can, I agree with putting something in the definitions, and I think we can piggyback this, keep the language consistent in both locations.
I was just going to add, if I go to the top of this section, these are duties of the commission,
Mhm,
through D. And
mhm.
so the town manager, what I read C to say is not that the town manager gets to determine an emergency situation exists, and then provide that notification. It's that the commission determines an emergency situation exists that affects the project and communicates
Correct.
to the town manager, who then communicates that to the council. And
And the
that,
town manager certifies it. So we give the authority to the town manager to certify that this exists. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, we're not having them give it to the council and have the council certify that there's an emergency or extraordinary situation to the project. We do give a little bit more oomph to the town manager here.
it's just that earlier in the language that is drafted at the start, that seems to be unilateral, and that the town manager, without the counsel of the commission, could
Mhm.
determine that an emergency situation exists and determine whether or not a project goes through any part of this process after that determination. At least in this case, the commission actually already has the project, and an emergency situation occurs.
Mhm.
The town manager then needs to respond to. But it will have still gone to the commission, and in order to get to the commission, the project will have gone to the council. So I think they're very different situations. In one instance, the town manager could determine whether or not a project touches this process at all. And in this instance, the town manager can determine or certify if this process, after having gone through much of it already, is still important or useful or necessary given the emergency situation. So I think they're very different. I don't know if other counselors have views on that.
Well,
Yeah,
if I
no.
understand you correctly, this is when a project is ongoing you're referring to, whereas what's proposed up front is, like in the case of the
In
car
general,
running into
yeah.
the building, the
Mhm.
project, if I'm right, the project had been completed. So there may not have been a building committee at that time when that needed to be done. Those are two different circumstances.
So, I mean, I think the I know we obviously want to send a recommendation to council tonight. Lauren, I don't know if you can clarify if and this will be useful perhaps for the rest of our conversation if there are other things, but if we can hold parts of this and just demonstrate transmit something to the council with changes we're comfortable with, and then those couple, perhaps this piece being one of them, we can continue to workshop and then send those revisions after. Are we permitted to do that? Is that fine?
Yes, and I would also, so yes, and your process is for items to go to 2 meetings. So even if I give this to leadership tonight to make sure it gets on the agenda, you can still be making changes and approving the changes to the council up until Thursday, right? For what would get into next week's packet. But we can approve certain items and then let them know next Tuesday at the meeting that for their final approval will be these current items as well as a few additional that we're waiting on clarification for. Yeah.
Perfect. So if thank you for that. If comfortable, I guess we'll hold on this piece.
Yeah.
We'll continue discussing this, and we can continue to move through our revisions.
I just wanted to clarify, the reason that I wanted the upon approval of the town manager stricken from this sentence is because it doesn't make sense to me. Because it's not the approval of I mean, the ordinance shall not apply to emergency repair or emergency renovation projects. The way this sentence is constructed, it sounds like the town manager is giving approval that this does not apply, and that's not the case. It's written into the ordinance that the town council will approve. So that's why I'm strongly suggesting we delete upon approval of the town manager. I think it's important to have to put something in about an emergency repair or renovation. And I'm wondering if I mean, we could use repair and or renovation. It's fine with me. And then we clarify the meaning under definition. But that was one of the reasons that I wanted that sentence revised.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take this back to the attorney and to see what advice the attorney would give us.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that it's not the approval of the town manager that determines that the ordinance won't apply. It really is upon approval of the ordinance by the town council after public hearing and final discussion. I think it's kind of apples and oranges. I understand, and I pretty much agree with the fact that if there's that kind of an emergency, then the town that will define, the town manager will jump on it and will take charge and begin whatever's necessary to remediate that within while notification to the town council. And we'll come up with a time frame.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be dense. If we have an emergency, if this building blows up, what this is saying is that the town manager can say, we have a legitimate emergency. We need to start making significant emergency repairs to town hall. So we are going to start.
This sentence, I guess that's not what this, the way I read it now, that's not what this sentence says to me. That's why I would rather start with, this ordinance shall not apply to emergency repair or emergency renovation projects. And then maybe we have another sentence that clarifies this, as well as having emergency situation defined in the definitions.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm not being clear.
No, I will go back to the attorney and just see how he thinks we can clarify this. The intent of this sentence is to say exactly what you're saying, that if we have an emergency situation in town, the town manager has the authority to say, we are not going to follow the ordinance and send this to a commission. We are going to start making emergency repairs. That is the intent of that sentence.
And I want to,
right, and I get that. I just don't think that's what this sentence conveys, or the way it's constructed.
I'll just add that for the record, I don't think, and I know you're not saying this, Lauren, but myself, Councilor Nagel, Councilor Rada, I don't think any of us are assuming any malintent at all.
No.
Yeah.
Mm.
So we'll continue to work on this.
Yeah.
And we can keep moving forward if councilors are all right with that.
Yeah. And I just, I don't know if it'll help the conversation, just really quickly, I will throw out there that if something like that were to happen and that an appropriation of funds, so consider that if there's an emergency, most likely we do not have funding for whatever the emergency repairs are, right? They're most likely not going to be available in CIP or in the operating budget. So to appropriate money in an emergency situation per the charter, that requires council approval. So even if the town manager were given the authority to say, we don't have to go to the PMBC on these repairs, the town manager couldn't appropriate money that wasn't there without calling the council together and having an emergency appropriation of the council. Just so you know, there is still a checks and balance. I just want to get that out there too.
Okay, then it does come to us eventually.
Yes, exactly. It just would give the town manager the authority in the moment to say, we're not gonna go to the PMBC commit, the commission itself. We're gonna start addressing the issues as staff, basically.
I'm still very sensitive, as I think we all are, of any
Mhm.
call to this process. Because the intention of this ordinance is to avoid those carve outs. And so in a lot of ways. So maybe there's a definition that needs to be had here, as Councilor Rada said, some clarification of the authority responsible for determining an emergency repair is needed, whatever that might be. I still think there's some clarity needed.
Keeping in this powers and duties section, just to keep the conversation going, there was also a question as to there was a question, and I will just quickly get it on the record just so we know the question was there. You guys all received it. If this ordinance would apply to land acquisition, after review with Matt and review with the town attorney, I don't believe that that would fall under this ordinance. This really talks about building projects. If we had a piece of land that we were going to put a building on, then the building would fall into this ordinance. But just so the public knows that that question was addressed and we're moving on from that one. And then staying in this section, the only other suggestion was to clarify where we had initially had town and Board of Education buildings, to clarify town owned buildings. So the fact that that would also encompass, for instance, fire department buildings. There was a suggestion to codify that into the language and to actually include in here town, Board of Education, and fire department buildings, just to make it clear that all of these types of buildings fall under this ordinance. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that change.
No, I had made notes, and that looks exactly the way I was envisioning it.
I have no
Perfect.
problem with it.
Okay, so then my only other thing is, which I have not done yet, we say town and Board of Education buildings throughout the document. So if you guys are okay with it, I will go back and make sure all the circular references are the same. So I'm just going to put this before we get this over to council for next week. I'm just going to give myself a note here because I only made it in the first instance. I will go through and make it in all 90 instances.
Good luck.
Would this include, without going through it, the whole long list, such as historical buildings that the town owns?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, those would be town buildings. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm fine.
So moving on, none of the rest of this on this page has been changed from the last time that we met. These are all still your current red lines. We did have a question from staff in the definitions, define some, and this, I think Dave goes back to a comment you just made, to define a threshold for which projects would fall into this ordinance. So prior ordinances did have a threshold. Projects of a certain amount would fall into this ordinance. I feel like we talked about this so much at the beginning. We talked about what that threshold would be, the fact that 25,000 was too little, the fact that 250,000 was an interesting number. And we talked about, would that threshold be something that had to go to referendum? And in the end, this committee decided to take out the idea of the threshold, so that this ordinance would encompass more, I don't want to say more projects, but so that the ordinance would encompass really the projects that fall under the idea of major construction and major renovation, regardless of dollar amount attached to those. So we did have a staff suggestion that said, do you want thresholds? What about things that are kind of a low dollar amount? And would we carve those things out? Another concept that went along with this is there was the idea of, what if something met a quote threshold, but there wasn't time to give the committee the ability to do the project? So the example given is the EOC project. We don't have a building committee, an ad hoc building committee right now for the EOC project. because we're under such a tight timeline with the state grant funding, because we lost, you know, almost 2 years of the state grant timeline in deciding where we were going to put the EOC. Obviously, we would hope that something like that wouldn't happen again. But because of that, we are meeting internally weekly. Actually, this week I have an EOC meeting yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So to ask a volunteer committee to meet, you know, multiple times throughout the week in order to get that done, we decided that that probably wouldn't be feasible. So Matt and I, Councilor Porter and I talked about this, you know, and just the fact that we really didn't want to create a carve out, as was the suggestion, but instead to give the committee the authority to say, we've reviewed this project that would normally come to us under this PMBC ordinance, and we, the committee, feel we cannot meet these deadlines, to really give that authority to the commission to decide. So that is further down. I just want to address it quickly here because it was brought up as a suggestion for the definition section. But there is language that I will scroll down to now that is from the attorney that gives that authority actually to the commission. I thought I highlighted it, but I didn't. So this is the language that the attorney and I put into the building project procedures versus in the definitions. It's under project initiation section of the procedures. And I'll just read it out loud for the public. If the commission determines that it cannot meet any timeline associated with this ordinance, including with the receipt of state or federal grants for a particular project, the commission shall make a recommendation to the town manager that the project not be subject to this ordinance. The town manager may adopt or reject the commission's recommendation. If the manager rejects the commission's recommendation, the commission shall oversee the project in accordance with this ordinance. So this is that other item that I had mentioned when we were talking about the first one that's highlighted, that this also gives that authority to the manager. So I think there's kind of two things to talk about here. Do we want to give the commission the authority to say, or to be able to request that they not oversee a project is one. And two, do we want that adoption or rejection of the commission's recommendation to come from the manager?
You councilors have thoughts on those 2 points?
I can start. I think that could very well be a situation. So I think that, if we have a building committee, that we've, with membership that we feel comfortable with, that understand and know building, that I feel comfortable giving them the opportunity to say, this is something that, whatever we say, what is it in here, that they can't, somehow they can't complete this, or they can't take this on. What I do, and I'm going to go back to what I had said a few minutes ago. What I am uncomfortable with is that it goes to the town manager, who then has the final decision. I don't see anywhere in here where the town council is informed or is or approves any recommendation, and that concerns me.
It's the similar question to the other section.
Exactly.
And I agree with you on that, Councilor Rada.
I agree with Councilor Rada and Councilor Nagel. I think one of the things we wanted to do was empower expertise as a part of this. So first part of your point, Councilor Rada, about that it makes sense to empower the commission to make that kind of recommendation. I think that is important, but for the final recommendation to be approved or rejected by the town manager unilaterally, again, I think is a bit of a bridge too far.
So if you guys are okay with it, just for the sake of the conversation, because I think that these are the same concerns that are in the prior section, I will go back to the town attorney on both of these let's hold off on recommending these two changes to the council to look at next week, just to keep, so that we keep the process moving. But I will try to get an answer for you this week from the town attorney so that we can meet again, if not Thursday of this week, maybe, or the beginning of next week, and just kind of hammer out these last two, hopefully last two, things, the last two things that we really need to refine and just make sure that everyone's comfortable with. Are you guys okay with that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you, Lauren, so
Yep.
much.
So I'm going to scroll back up, because outside of that, there was not much that came from the, in between the last two times that we have reviewed the document. We made a couple of minor changes as to in the ex officio membership. We did have a department question. Is there a specific ex officio member? Who decides who serves? And can the ex officio member, in theory, be an advisory member? For example, if the mayor or the town manager designates somebody as under ex officio membership here, could they designate one of the people on the advisory membership? And I think that's pretty obvious that answer is yes. And that in both instances, it would be fine because the person is there to give their expertise and does not have voting privileges. So kind of a moot question. The only other thing that we changed over here was, which apparently I didn't add it in here. Sorry about that. We did have a suggestion that Matt and I thought was completely appropriate to add or their designee to the list of advisory members. Just that, for instance, if there was a project that the chief information officer couldn't handle, didn't have time to address, but did involve the IT department, he could designate one of his, staff members to be the advisory member. I don't think that that's
That
really a
makes
substantial
sense to me.
issue. Yeah, it's not really
I'm
a
fine with
substantial
that.
change.
Just one other thing up here, the ex officio membership section.
Mhm.
I wonder if the second half of the third bullet point for the Board of Fire Commissioners should be also mirrored in the second point for the Board of Education, just for consistency's sake. So on any project for the construction, renovation, or demolition of, in this case, Board of Education buildings, as referred to the commission.
I think that's a pretty fair change. It just keeps the consistency, which we've been trying to do throughout the entire document.
Any counselors, any questions about that page?
No, I'm fine.
No,
Okay. That concludes the items that have come up between your last meeting in December and today. So everything else that is on here outside of these two items that I will go back to the town attorney on are red lines that were made within your meetings in November and December.
Great. So if counselors are all right with it, big moment, drum roll, please. I think we need a motion to, Lauren, you tell me if this is kosher.
Yeah.
Probably. We need a motion to transmit edits of this ordinance number 2123-02, transmit amendments to this ordinance recommendations to the council as approved by the full commission membership, only those edits approved by the full commission membership. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second.
second.
Moved by Councilor Nagel, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rada. Any discussion? Okay, if not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? We're good. Perfect. Motion passes 3-0. So, so then, Lauren, thank you. First of all, pause for just one moment. A huge thank you to Lauren for all your
Yes.
hard work and your patience, your lots of patience and your dedication to this process. As we've moved forward with it, we started meeting, if we can believe it, in July of last year.
Wow.
And this has been a very arduous process, but I can't think of a single meeting where I didn't leave it thinking we had done terrific work. And a lot of that is because of your preparation and your commitment to this process, Lauren. So we just appreciate your work so much, and we'll look forward to continuing to work on those couple last
Yeah,
pieces.
perfect.
Hopefully they won't take us till next July, but but otherwise, I think this has been a terrific process. So thank you.
Great. My pleasure.
Great. So with that, then I guess we will open up for public participation. Anyone in the room or over Zoom, if they would like to speak, please signify by raising your hand in the Zoom function, and you will be called on to speak. Do we
We do
have?
not have any attendees on the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, then seeing none, any comments from counselors?
Just that I'm happy that this is moving on and we're getting close to it going to council, which has been my mantra for quite a while, but I do understand, as we've talked about, why things have been delayed.
Thank you, Counselor Nick. Terrific. Well, then, if no further comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, all set. Thank you so much, everybody. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye, guys.